morning and welcome to Ark and Dove Presbyterian Church in Odenton, Maryland. I'm Christa Kronser, your host on The Lobby, the weekly program on the life and ministry of the church. Today is the 13th Sunday after Pentecost, and we are back to school. The program year is starting at Ark and Dove, and we have new staff to shepherd us along our spiritual path. Today, I'll be talking to our new interim associate pastors, Caroline and Stephen Price-Gibson. But first, let's talk about what else is happening at Ark and Dove. The choir is back to its normal schedule of rehearsing every Thursday evening. Rebecca has handed out a full slate of music for this fall session, and there is still time to join if you're interested in lifting your voice with a group. Please see Rebecca to learn more, or just show up on Thursday evening. This is the last week of summer Sunday school using the Holy Moly curriculum. Thank you to the teachers who made this possible this summer. As we look to resume godly play classes for children grades K through 5, we are still in need of adult helpers. We especially want to be able to offer a middle school class during the 10:30 service. Please see Sarah Fox if you are ready to share God's love with our children and youth. Logos is set to resume with the first session on Tuesday, September 27th. Registrations are available on the website. Signups for volunteer positions are also available, and we need many helpers to make this a successful program. Training for volunteers will happen on September 13th over Zoom. Also on September 13th, join Michelle Schoonmaker and Katie Nilsson-Johnson for a refresher and update on intersectionality and the church. What does this mean? Intersectionality refers to overlapping systems of disadvantage for multiple groups, including race, gender, and class. One session on September 13th will be a refresher. The session on September 14th will focus on reproductive rights in the church. Get the Zoom invites from Katie Nilsson-Johnson. We are having some beautiful weather, perfect for walking and running. Start training now for the Lighthouse 5K on Sunday, September 18th to benefit our partner organization's work to prevent homelessness in Annapolis. The Sunday morning walk or run has virtual and in-person components. The in-person portion will be held at the beautiful Quiet Waters Park. Here's a fun news flash. We have our annual picnic in 2 weeks. On Saturday, September 17th, a chili cook-off this year. Will you enter your favorite recipe? Will you be a judge? How spicy is too spicy? Versions of our best chili with and without meat will be available. Signups are in the archive and the website. This party will be outside on the grass. I'm happy to welcome our newest staff members, Caroline and Stephen Price-Gibson. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Hello.
We know you're our new associate pastors, but we don't know how you're qualified for this position. Can you tell us some about your backgrounds?
Well, we are both retired Presbyterian ministers. We have both served in parishes for 40 years in a variety of locations, small town, very small town, large town, suburbs, central cities. We have been pastors in upstate New York, in rural Iowa, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in Richmond, Virginia, and most recently in Nebraska. And we came from Nebraska to retire to Odenton, Maryland. So we've been around a few blocks a few times.
Those are impressive qualifications. Can you share more about your family and your personal lives?
Well, I was actually born in England. My father and mother were both British. My father was in the British Army. And so as a young child, I lived in various places, Singapore, Germany, and then my father was posted at the Pentagon. So I came to this area. When he retired after that, we went back to England, but he decided to become a Presbyterian minister. So we came back to America. He only lived about 18 months after that because he developed cancer. And so I grew up as my mother was sort of a single mom then with 4 kids, and she went to college at that point. Throughout that time, I struggled with questions of faith, and I ended up majoring in religion and philosophy in college. And what do you do with that? Well, at that time, you certainly didn't become a minister if you were a woman. I didn't know any women ministers back then, but our chaplain took us to seminary, and I decided I would teach. And so I started out in a program with Columbia teaching. I found myself called to ministry and switched programs and ended up as a minister. I think Stephen said the various places that we've been in ministry. We have 2 sons. One lives in Falls Church, now he's in Alexandria, and one lives in Odenton.
I am a native of Detroit, Michigan. I feel almost as dedicated to the Detroit Tigers baseball team as Pastor John was dedicated to the New England Patriots in football. But I will try to not impose that enthusiasm on the congregation very much. I grew up in a household where both my parents came from non-Presbyterian backgrounds, and they found and flourished in a Presbyterian congregation. I had a home example of what a vital Presbyterian congregation could mean to a couple and to a family. I wanted to serve the church from an early age, but I assumed that I would be doing it academically or maybe in some other kind of field. But it was doing field work in seminary in an urban ministry setting in Philadelphia. I discovered that it was actually the life of the congregation that was the place where people took real inspiration and found strength in order to live the kind of lives and to explore the world, hopefully through God's eyes, rather than the other courses that I had been imagining. And so I found myself in the parish when I graduated from seminary, very much to the surprise of myself and others who knew me. But I'm glad that's where I landed.
Well, and you've been attending Ark and Dove for several years now. What keeps you coming back to Ark and Dove?
Well, one of the things that attracted us to Ark and Dove is a silly little thing, but John went to the same seminary as Stephen, and Tim went to the same seminary as me. So it sort of felt like a fit. And then when we came and discovered what a wonderful congregation you are, we wanted to stay.
We moved to Odenton for very pragmatic reasons, and we had no idea what kind of church was in the neighborhood. And we were just absolutely blown away to discover that our most local, immediate Presbyterian USA congregation happened to be Ark and Dove. It is a congregation that we feel embodies values and ways of doing things and a general attitude that we are just very thrilled to have found we could make our church. And we feel very honored that we now have this opportunity to be of service to it.
And I also want to say it's going to be a joy to be working with Pastor Tim.
Do you have any goals or priorities that you want to see really emphasized during your times as interims?
Our principal goal is to assist the congregation to continue to be the great congregation that it has been, allow the congregation to facilitate the congregation remaining on track. So we'll be taking our cues from Pastor Tim and the session in the work that we do in order to do that. We know that great new things are going to occur when the permanent associate pastor is here, and we want to make sure that Ark and Dove is ready for the wonderful gifts that that pastor is going to bring.
Do you have plans to split the role by ministry area or any other allocation?
To some degree, we do, although things will evolve as the work emerges. Right now, we are assuming that Stephen will take primary responsibility for adult education type things. He'll be leading the weekly Bible study and other adult things that emerge, although I can help with that too. And I'll take primarily responsibility for coordinating with our Christian education as we work with the young people and children, although Stephen will be involved in that too. So
I will also have some of my time focused on relating to outreach initiatives in the congregation. And we're both going to be involved in worship, and when we can appropriately do so, in offering pastoral care as situations arise.
That's wonderful. Another thing, I noticed you both use the name Price-Gibson. Do you mind sharing if this is both of your last names combined from prior to marriage, or is it something different?
it is probably a big mistake, but it was in vogue 40 years ago when we got married. I had the name Price and had worked as Price, Caroline Price, in where we were living. It took me a while to decide to become Caroline Gibson, partly because Stephen's mother was also called Caroline Gibson. So it was, oh well. So I kept the Price. And then eventually I said to Stephen, oh, I'm ready now. I'll become Caroline Gibson. We had been married maybe 6 months by then. And he said, no.
I said, well, let's combine our names. It's a done thing. And now we have to decide whether it should be Price-Gibson or Gibson-Price. And we used a very sophisticated method to decide which name came in which order. We said over and over and over again, Price-Gibson, Gibson-Price, Price-Gibson, Gibson-Price. And we found that Price-Gibson seemed to be easier to say. And so that's how we landed on it.
And it's been part of us for so long. Our kids are called Price-Gibson, but we probably would not do it again if we had it to do over. It's very confusing when you're looking for your dry cleaning or anything like that.
Well, I think that it's just great that you guys share a last name with that kind of story behind it. I love that. And thank you for sharing that with us. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
One thing I'd like to say is people are always curious about my leg and why does she walk on crutches and why doesn't she have a false leg and all kinds of questions. Well, when I was 17, I had cancer, and back then they didn't have much chemotherapy. And so their best bet at staving it off was to chop off the leg at the next joint up. So they took it off at the hip. When I have a false leg, I have a hip, a knee, and an ankle joint to manage, and it comes up above my waist. And so I lived with false legs for years and years and years, but as I got older, my balance is not as good, and I find crutches so much easier that eventually I said, oh, forget the vanity of trying to look like everyone else and just go on crutches. So that's what I do.
Thank you so much for jumping into these new roles. We look forward to having you in the pulpit in just a few minutes, Caroline, and many more times for either of you going forward. Thanks also to everyone watching. I hope you have a good week, and here's the live stream service.